aircraft has already been shot down, guys have been killed, the other aircraft's been hit and damaged. What's your thought process going into the situation like this?
Well, to be honest, at the time, I didn't, you only know what they tell you. Mm-hmm. So what we didn't talk about is, like, I responded to a fallen angel earlier. Actually, in the first deployment, I responded to one. And it's usually when you get there, because the bad guys, for the most part, knew that somebody, all hell's going to break loose if they stay around. They usually break contact as soon as something like that goes down.
Yep.
So we're headed that way, and because there's a lot of unanswered questions, like at that time I didn't know there were 800 bad guys down there. We just heard there was like a troops in contact that we were supposed to go break up, and
that's something you were doing every day.
And I think at the first radio call, they may have said like 20 or 30 armed insurgents, which is not that hair-raising. Mm-hmm. And it took 30 minutes to fly there from where we were at. So unfortunately, that gives you time to think about things, because you're flying and there's, not much else to do other than think. And the closer as time went on, we get situation updates, and the number of bad guys keeps growing and growing and growing. And so we're like talking to each other, going like, "What the hell's going on down there?" And we're at least smart enough to look at we have a moving map in the aircraft, so we're at least smart enough to look at the map, look at where the shoot down area is, and come up with a plan about how we're going to come in there. So there was a lot of desert out to the west of where the shoot down was, just wide open desert. So we decided, and it was late afternoon, we decided to go out to the west and come in that way so the sun would be behind us. So if the guys on the ground had a man pads, it's a man-portable air defense weapon, the sun would help us in that respect. And also, just coming out of the sun makes it harder for them to see us, to shoot at us. Mm-hmm. So we set up out to the west out there, and I think we went through one turn, and my front seater looked inbound on the site, and he saw like 20 bad guys just lined up on a berm, like shooting towards the friendlies.
Yeah, going to the book here, you say, we approached the flight from the north, swinging out wide to the west to stay clear of the fight until we were invited in. After getting situation update from Big Gun, we took over the flight around 1500. Flight lead was talking with the JTAC on the ground, Titan 01, while I made contact with Big Gun CP at Kalsu. After we made a couple turns in an orbit to the west, I heard Jay exclaim, "Man, oh man." I snuck a look out of my left side TSD where I had Jay's video displayed and saw two groups of armed men, each numbering between 10 and 15, arrayed along an east-west running earthen berm, firing at friendly forces to the north. I called Dog on internal and asked him, "Do you guys have eyes on two groups of individuals on the east-west berm?" Dog replied immediately that they did. We divided up the targets. On the next pass, lead would take the far group and we would take the near targets. I was trying to stay out of Jay's cockpit and let him set the aircraft up so he could be ready to engage as necessary. But this was going to be the first time he would fire at anything in anger, so I wanted to talk to him about how I saw the engagement going. I reminded Jay that on the basis of my previous experience, once we started firing, I expected them to scatter, so he should take his time and engage whatever targets he could fire at after the first burst. I had lagged back a bit, so when Dog broke off his first attack run, I'd be in position to cover his egress and engage. I saw him break to the left, and I called visual and inbound. As soon as lead was clear of us, I informed Jay he was cleared to engage. His first burst of 30 millimeter was a little left, and he got no immediate effects on target, so he adjusted and fired again. We got 3 bursts off on the first pass. The weird thing is that I was wrong. The AIF, that's anti-Iraqi forces, stayed in place even though 30 millimeter rounds were bursting around them. We found out later in the after-action review that the ground unit found atropine injectors and other types of drugs among the bodies. They were apparently higher than a kite at this time, which might explain why they didn't move. In retrospect, I wish I had fired rockets in our initial pass, since a group of individuals in the open is a classic rocket target. On the second pass, we got a little better weapon effect on target. We broke off our gun run, and we were in the turn to pick up lead who was outbound. I looked back over my shoulder just to ensure nobody was trying to shoot at us in the ass. Just then I saw a huge explosion to the north side of the berm. I immediately called Dog since he was on the primary guy talking with the JTAC and asked, did the Air Force just drop a bomb? Say again? Did the Air Force just drop a bomb? We just had a huge explosion on the side of the berm. Not that I know of. Whatever it was, it had caused the people who were able to start moving off the berm and down toward a trench at the base of the hill. It was, in fact, a bomb dropped by an F-16 from somewhere up in the ether. I was amused to read in an article in Stars and Stripes newspaper a few months later that this bomb strike turned the tide of the battle, and the pilot of the F-16 received a Distinguished Flying Cross for his actions that day. Unfortunately, nobody bothered to tell those brown dudes on the ground that the battle was over, so we turned inbound and fired all our remaining flechette rockets into the trench line. We couldn't tell till we reviewed the tapes back at Camp Taji, but we did get good effects with the rockets, which we followed up with the gun getting good hits. That seems crazy that there's a freaking F-16 dropping bombs while you guys are in the area. Is that not like an error of some kind?
I don't technically know that the JTAC. I wasn't in range of it. The JTAC has control of all that. I would have just. It was a communications problem, is what it was. It wasn't. I don't think there was anything wrong that went on.
Got it.
It was just the fact. Okay,
you just didn't know about it.
I knew it was a bomb that blew up, but it's like, is somebody going to tell us that they're dropping bombs? Now, I wasn't on the freak with the JTAC, so they may have told Dog up in the front that, yeah, we're bringing in some guys to drop ordnance.
Right.
So I just think it was a communication problem, but, that's war.
And then you read in an article that Stars and Stripes article that saved the day, apparently.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it is the awards that we were put in for were downgraded by division. And they certainly weren't Distinguished Flying Crosses.
You guys spend more time down there, get that place mopped up. Finally, we were released to return to Taji. After takeoff, Dog punched in a direct route back home. We flew the aircraft as fast as we could go. We arrived at Taji and taxied next into parking, shutting down with over 8 hours of flight time for the day. I hadn't left the cockpit or moved out of the seat in that time. Freaking 8 hours sitting in that thing. What if do you guys wear like a piss bladder or something? If you got a piss?
Well, usually what would happen is down on the flight line before we went out to the aircraft, they had a freezer and it had like bottles of Gatorade in it that were frozen. Put it up on the dash, and about halfway through the mission, it's unfrozen, so you could drink some cold Gatorade. When you empty the bottle, you got something to piss in.
Check.
So if you need to pee, you transfer the controls to the other pilot and take care of business. I don't know what the girls do.
Check.